What if the person you loved most in the world was hiding a secret so dark it could destroy your entire identity? What if one innocent family photo didn't capture a happy memory, but instead revealed a crime that had been buried for 18 years? Before we dive into this mind-blowing story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. Trust me, by the end of this, you will never look at a vacation photo the same way again. The chilly morning breeze carried the familiar scent of the River Thames as 18-year-old Alicia Gibson, who everyone called Ellie, walked along Queen's Walk in South London. For a young woman from the United States, this trip to England was a dream come true. Her eyes were wide with wonder, drinking in every historic building, every street lamp, every sound of a city that felt both foreign and magical. She wasn't alone. Right by her side was her father, Henry Gibson, a tall, energetic man with a warm smile and restless energy. They had just finished a long morning walk and were heading back to their rented Airbnb apartment on Bay Street. Ellie turned to Henry, her face glowing with happiness. "Dad," she said, "we should really do more trips like this as a family. This has been absolutely amazing so far." Henry chuckled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Well, sweetheart, I hate to break it to you, but this trip pretty much emptied our holiday savings jar. If you want to plan another adventure next year, you might need to cut back on your online shopping habit." Ellie laughed, a light, carefree sound. "That's a fair deal. I don't mind buying less clothes if it means I get to do this again with you and Mom." As they continued their relaxed pace, the majestic Tower Bridge came into view. Its two grand towers rose against a bright blue sky, creating a postcard-perfect scene. That's when Ellie noticed a man standing nearby with a sleek, portable photo booth, the kind you usually see at weddings or corporate events. He noticed their American accents and approached them with a friendly, professional smile. "Hello there," he said cheerfully. "How would you like a lovely souvenir? My booth prints on magnetic surfaces instantly. I'll even throw in a digital copy. Only £9.99 for the two of you." Ellie's eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "Oh, Dad, can we, please? It would be the perfect way to remember this day." Henry couldn't resist his daughter's enthusiasm. "All right, let's do it." They posed together near an iron railing by a lamppost. Henry wrapped his arms around Ellie from behind, hugging her close. The Tower Bridge and the shimmering river provided the perfect backdrop. It was a sweet, innocent father-daughter moment. The photo booth whirred to life, and within seconds, it printed out a magnetic photo. Henry paid the man and accepted the print. But then something strange happened. As Henry looked at the picture, a flicker of surprise, or was it fear, crossed his face. He quickly shoved the photo into his jacket pocket. Ellie noticed, but didn't think much of it at first. "Can I see it, Dad? Did we look good?" she asked, reaching for her phone as the cameraman offered to send the digital copy. Henry's response was oddly rushed. "Let's head back now, sweetheart. We'll have a look at the apartment. Your mom is waiting, and we've been out since morning." Ellie felt a tiny, nagging feeling that something was off. Her father's reaction to the photo seemed strange. Did he not like it? Was he worried about spending more money? She pushed the thought aside. After all, their apartment was only a 5-minute walk away. If the photo was a disappointment, they could always come back and take more. They arrived at the cozy Airbnb on Bay Street. Ellie's mother, Lisa Gibson, greeted them warmly. "How was the morning walk?" she asked, putting down a suitcase. "Did you bring me any breakfast?" Henry produced a paper bag with a fresh croissant inside and placed it on the table. Ellie, still buzzing with excitement, flopped onto the couch and pulled out her phone. Lisa noticed her daughter's energy and gave Henry a questioning look. "What's got her so excited?" "We took a picture together at Queen's Walk," Henry explained. "There was a man with a portable photo booth. Printed a magnetic copy." From the couch, Ellie called out playfully, "Dad's being sneaky. He's keeping the magnetic copy all to himself and leaving me with just the digital one." Henry grinned, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, at least you have the digital copy to post on social media." "You know me too well, Dad," Ellie replied, already engrossed in her phone. The Airbnb buzzed with the quiet energy of a family on vacation. Lisa savored her croissant, while Ellie carefully edited the photo, adjusting the contrast and brightness. Henry, ever the restless soul, glanced around the room. "You know," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "we've accumulated quite a bit of trash already. I think I'll take it down to the garbage chute and maybe get some fresh air." Lisa and Ellie nodded absently. They were used to Henry's need to be outside. Even back home in the US, he could never sit still for long. As Henry gathered the trash and left, Ellie continued working on her photo. She zoomed in, playing with the brightness and shadows. And that's when she saw it. In the background of their perfect, picture-perfect moment, there was a green trash bin. Normally, you'd ignore something like that, but attached to the bin was a missing person flyer. Ellie squinted at the small image. She could make out the face of a little girl. The words, "still missing," were boldly printed above the child's photo. A strange wave of familiarity washed over Ellie. She stared at the girl's face, but she couldn't figure out why it felt so known. Shaking off the odd feeling, she finished her edits and uploaded the photo to her social media account. As she hit post, her mother's voice broke through her concentration. "Ellie, honey, let's go. I'm done with breakfast. You know how impatient your father gets when he's waiting." Ellie tucked her phone into her purse and joined her mother. They stepped outside, expecting to find Henry in the hallway or lobby, but he was nowhere to be seen. Surprisingly, neither Lisa nor Ellie felt particularly worried. Henry had a habit of wandering off and reappearing without warning. He was never a quiet man. "He'll reach out when he's ready," Lisa said with a shrug. They began to walk along the riverbank, retracing the path Ellie and Henry had taken earlier. Eventually, they found themselves back at the spot where the photo had been taken. The cameraman was still there, busy with other customers. And there, standing by the trash bin with the missing person flyer, was Henry. To Ellie's surprise, her father was in the process of removing the poster from the bin. She and Lisa approached him, curiosity piqued. "Dear, what are you doing?" Lisa asked, a note of concern in her voice. "Those bins are full of germs." But it was Ellie who voiced the question that had immediately sprung to mind. "Dad, why are you taking down that poster?" Henry's head snapped up. His eyes were wide with surprise. For a moment, he seemed completely lost for words. Then, a practiced smile spread across his face. "Oh, this?" he said, his voice a touch too casual. "Some poor family must have put this up looking for their lost daughter. I didn't want you to see it and get upset. I know how sensitive you are about things like that." He chuckled nervously, folding the flyer and tucking it into his jacket pocket. "It reminded me of those old news stories back in the States, the ones that always freaked you out as a kid. You used to have nightmares about kidnappings, remember?" Ellie frowned. A nagging feeling of unease settled in her stomach. Her father's explanation seemed odd, almost rehearsed. Why would he remove the flyer instead of just ignoring it? And how did he know about it before they did? But Lisa fussed over Henry, pouring sanitizer on his hands and suggesting they continue their exploration of London. Ellie pushed her doubts aside. It was silly to overthink her father's actions. He was probably just being overprotective in his own peculiar way. Still, as they set off to discover more of the city, Ellie couldn't quite shake the image of the little girl's face from her mind. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone streets. The city's vibrant energy pulsed around them, and any earlier suspicions in Ellie's mind began to fade. Hours slipped by in a blur of sightseeing. They visited landmarks, took more photos, and laughed together like the happy family Ellie believed them to be. As the clock tower of Big Ben chimed 1 p.m., Henry's stomach growled. He checked his watch, a familiar gesture that somehow seemed more deliberate than usual. "I'm getting hungry," he announced. "Let's find a place to grab some food." While Henry and Lisa scanned the area for a restaurant, Ellie trailed behind them, her attention fixed on her phone. The notifications from her earlier post had exploded, a constant stream of likes and comments. As she scrolled, one particular comment made her heart skip a beat. It was from her best friend back home. The words jumped off the screen. "OMG Ellie, that girl in the missing person flyer looks so much like you. It's like seeing your mini-me." Ellie's steps faltered. Her mind raced as she reread the comment. The playful tone of her friend's words did little to quell the unease growing in the pit of her stomach. She stared at her own photo again, her eyes drawn to the blurry image of the flyer in the background. The little girl's face, barely discernible in the low-resolution picture, seemed to stare back at her with an unsettling familiarity. "Ellie!" Henry's voice cut through her thoughts, sharp and urgent. She looked up to see him gesturing toward a charming restaurant with an outdoor seating area. "How about this place? It's just across Potter's Fields Park." Ellie nodded absently, forcing a smile as she followed her parents to a table nestled against the building's weathered brick facade. The wrought iron chairs scraped against the pavement. As her mother perused the menu, Ellie remained engrossed in her phone. Her thumbs flew across the screen as she typed out a reply to her friend, each word carefully chosen to sound casual, to hide the tremor of uncertainty she felt. "Ellie?" Henry called again, his voice laced with a concern that seemed oddly intense. "Is everything all right? What are you reading?" Startled by the urgency in his tone, Ellie quickly locked her phone and slipped it back into her purse. "Sorry, Dad. Just got distracted," she mumbled, reaching for the menu. They placed their orders with a cheerful waitress. But Ellie's mind kept drifting back to the missing person flyer. The nagging feeling of familiarity had only intensified. The clinking of cutlery and the low hum of conversation faded into the background as Ellie struggled with her thoughts. Then she made a decision. "Dad," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the comfortable silence. "Can I see that missing child flyer you took down earlier?" The effect of her words was immediate and alarming. Henry's fork clattered against his plate. The sound was unnaturally loud in the quiet corner of the restaurant. His face, previously relaxed in the afternoon sun, tightened visibly. "The flyer?" he repeated, his voice strained. I'm not sure I have it anymore, honey. It must have slipped out of my pocket or blown away in the wind." Ellie frowned. She was certain she had seen him tuck the flyer safely into his navy blue jacket, the same jacket that now hung on the back of his chair. "But I saw you put it in your pocket," she insisted, her voice steady despite the tremor of doubt that ran through her. Henry's hand moved to his jacket, patting the pocket in a gesture that seemed more performative than genuine. "Sorry, darling. It's not there anymore. It's probably for the best. You'd just get upset if you saw it." Lisa, who had been silently watching the exchange with her fork suspended halfway to her mouth, finally spoke up. "What's this about a flyer? I'm curious too." Henry waved his hand dismissively. "It's nothing, really. We shouldn't ruin our holiday mood over a piece of paper." But Ellie couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that her father was hiding something. He had been steering clear of any conversation about the flyer since that morning. The weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the air. In an attempt to change the subject, or maybe to pierce through the tension, Ellie asked, "Do either of you have any of my childhood photos on your phones?" The question, innocent as it seemed, caused Henry to tense visibly. His knuckles whitened as he gripped his napkin. "Why do you ask?" he said, his voice tight. Ellie tried to keep her tone light, casual, even as her heart raced. "Well," she began, "I posted that picture we took together on social media, and my friends keep saying how similar I look to that little girl in the flyer, like I'm just the adult version of her." "That's nonsense," Henry said firmly, his words clipped and sharp. "Your mother and I raised you. You don't look anything like that girl." The vehemence in his tone took Ellie aback. She pressed on, adopting a playful tone that felt forced even to her own ears. "Come on, Dad. You must have at least one of my childhood photos on your phone. Can I see it? Please." Henry's expression tightened further. Lines etched themselves deeply around his mouth and eyes. "I'm afraid not, sweetheart. My phone memory was full, so I moved most of the files to our computer back home before the trip. I don't have any of your old pictures with me." Lisa nodded in agreement, a beat too late to be entirely natural. "I don't have any on my phone either, dear." Disappointment washed over Ellie, mingled with a growing sense of doubt. Why did her father keep making excuses? Why was he avoiding the topic of the missing flyer? Why did a simple request for a childhood photo sprout so many explanations? As she glanced around the restaurant, seeking a distraction from the discomfort that had settled over their table, her gaze landed on a figure across the street in Potter's Fields Park. A woman, her movements purposeful and determined, was in the process of putting up a flyer. The same missing girl flyer. "Look," Ellie said, pointing toward the park. "There's someone putting up more of those flyers." Henry and Lisa turned to look, Their movement was almost synchronized in their reluctance. As they watched the woman work, their faces paled visibly. The color drained away as if they had seen a ghost. When the woman turned, revealing her face fully, Henry suddenly broke into a coughing fit. His body shook with the force of it. Lisa sat frozen, her eyes wide and unblinking. "Do you know her?" Ellie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You both look like you've seen a ghost." "No," they answered in unison. Their voices overlapped in a way that felt too rehearsed, too quick to be entirely truthful. At that moment, their food arrived. The cheerful waitress was oblivious to the tension that crackled between the three of them. Ellie found herself unable to focus on the meal. She stood up and positioned her phone above the plates, snapping a picture of her dish more out of habit than genuine interest. As she lowered her phone, she glanced back toward the park. The woman had vanished, as if she had never been there at all. The family ate in uncomfortable silence. The clink of cutlery against plates was the only sound piercing the heavy quiet. As Ellie mechanically lifted forkfuls of food, her mind raced. The missing flyer, her parents' odd behavior, the woman in the park. All of it swirled together in a confusing maelstrom, as if there was some hidden meaning beneath it all. When the last remnants of their meal were cleared away, Ellie cleared her throat. "Where should we go next?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. To her surprise, Henry suggested, "Why don't we head back to the Airbnb apartment?" Ellie couldn't hide her disbelief. "Really, Dad? You want to go back to the apartment?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. It seemed entirely out of character for her father, who was usually the one pushing for more outdoor activities. Henry shrugged, a weary smile playing on his lips. "All this food is making me sleepy. I'm not as young as I used to be, you know?" The excuse rang hollow in Ellie's ears, but she nodded slowly. They paid the bill and set off toward their Airbnb, a short 10-minute walk. The streets of London stretched before them, but Ellie found herself unable to appreciate the sights. Her mind was too preoccupied with the growing list of questions that demanded answers. As they approached the apartment building, a familiar figure caught Ellie's attention. Her heart leapt into her throat. It was the woman from the park, now posting flyers just outside their building. The woman's movements were methodical, each flyer placed with care. Her face was a mask of determination tinged with a deep, abiding sadness. Without thinking, Ellie approached her. She was drawn by an inexplicable pull she couldn't quite understand. "I hope you find your missing girl, ma'am," she said softly, reaching out to gently tap the woman's shoulder. The woman turned. Her eyes widened in confusion as they met Ellie's. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Ellie felt a jolt of recognition, though she couldn't place why the stranger's face seemed so familiar. Before Ellie could say anything more, she felt hands on her shoulders pulling her back. Henry and Lisa had appeared beside her, their movements almost frantic as they ushered her into the building. Ellie stumbled, caught off guard by their urgency. "What are you doing?" Lisa hissed, her voice low and strained, as they entered the lobby. "You can't just approach strangers like that." Ellie opened her mouth to protest, but the words died on her lips as she caught sight of her parents' faces. Fear, raw and unmistakable, was etched into every line of their features. They rode the elevator in silence. Once inside their unit, an uncomfortable silence settled over the family. Henry and Lisa moved about the space with an air of forced casualness. Henry shrugged off his jacket and draped it over the sofa before unbuttoning the collar of his shirt. "Your mother and I are going to rest for a bit," he announced. "Maybe we can continue our sightseeing later, in an hour." Before Ellie could respond, Henry and Lisa disappeared into the bedroom. The door closed behind them with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. Left alone in the living room, Ellie sank onto the couch. She unlocked her phone and scrolled through more comments on her post. The observations about her resemblance to the missing girl had only increased. Each one sent a chill down her spine. She typed out a reply, trying to deflect attention with a joking emoticon. But even as she hit send, she knew the lightness of her words was a poor mask for the turmoil she felt inside. As she set her phone down, her eyes fell on Henry's jacket. It lay there, innocuous and unremarkable. And yet, Ellie felt drawn to it, as if it held the answers to all the questions swirling in her mind. Almost without realizing what she was doing, Ellie found herself reaching for the jacket. Her hands trembled slightly as she searched the pockets. Her breath caught in her throat as her fingers brushed against paper. The missing person flyer was still there, along with the magnetic photo print from that morning. Heart pounding, Ellie glanced toward her parents' closed bedroom door. She could hear the low murmur of their voices, though the words were indistinct. Knowing she had little time, she hurried to her own room and closed the door quietly behind her. Sitting on the edge of her bed, Ellie unfolded the flyer with trembling hands. The paper felt rough against her fingers. She ran her fingers over the printed image, taking in details she hadn't been able to see clearly in the low-resolution digital copy of her social media post. The little girl's face stared back at her, eyes wide and innocent, a smile frozen in time. But it was the date, in small print, that caught Ellie's eye and made her gasp audibly. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Not only did the girl look strikingly similar to her, but she would be exactly Ellie's age now. Ellie thought that if only she could find a picture from her childhood, it would confirm and ease her mind. Perhaps she was just overthinking the situation. With trembling hands, Ellie opened her social media app again. This time, she navigated to her father's profile. She scrolled through years of posts, each swipe revealing another layer of what she had always believed to be her life, until she reached the oldest ones. There, staring back at her from the screen, was a photo of herself from a few years after the age of the missing girl. Ellie's heart seemed to stop as she looked at it, really looked at it. For the first time, the resemblance was undeniable, unmistakable. In that moment, as Ellie sat on her bed in a rented apartment in London thousands of miles from the life she had always known, the foundations of her world began to crumble. Questions she had never considered before now demanded answers. Why was there a picture of her here in London so far from the US? And why had her parents been acting so suspiciously since the morning? Was there something they weren't telling her? With a determination born of desperation, Ellie snapped a close-up picture of the flyer with her phone. Then, she carefully folded the paper, creasing it along the same lines it had been before. She stepped out of her room, her movements cautious and deliberate. With utmost care, she returned the flyer to Henry's jacket pocket, arranging it exactly as she had found it. Ellie stood before her parents' bedroom door. One hand rested on the handle, while the other hovered, ready to knock. She wanted answers, even if she suspected they would only provide more excuses or perhaps even be angry with her for disturbing their rest. But just as her knuckles hovered inches from the wood, she heard muffled voices coming from within. Her hand froze. She found herself leaning closer, pressing her ear against the door. The cool surface of the wood contrasted sharply with the heat of her flushed cheek as she strained to make out the words being spoken on the other side. The muffled voices grew clearer. Each word was a dagger to her heart, shattering the last remnants of the life she thought she knew. "She keeps asking about that missing girl photo," Henry said, his voice tinged with panic. "There's no way she could find out, right?" Lisa's reply was softer but no less devastating. "It's either we tell her, or one day she'll find out on her own. She'll hate us, Henry. We've loved her enough," Henry insisted, his words carrying a desperate edge. "She won't betray us." A pause, heavy with unspoken truths. Then Lisa's voice, heavy with the weight of a long-held secret. "We kidnapped her, Henry. She would hate us." "This holiday is a mistake," Henry replied, coming back here to London. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as the shocking truth hit Ellie. She felt her chest constrict, realizing she had been holding her breath. A wave of dizziness washed over her. The room spun as the implications of what she had just heard crashed over her like a tidal wave. In her shock, Ellie stumbled slightly. Her hand accidentally pushed against the door handle. The door swung open with a soft creak, revealing Henry and Lisa, their faces masks of shock and horror as they realized Ellie had been listening. Time seemed to stand still as they stared at each other. The truth hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Ellie felt as if she were looking at strangers. The familiar features of her parents' faces suddenly seemed alien and threatening. "Mom? Dad?" Ellie's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. The words felt wrong in her mouth, a lie she had unknowingly been living for 18 years. "What were you talking about?" Henry's face paled. The color drained away as if he had seen a ghost. But even in his panic, he attempted to cover with another lie. We weren't talking about you, sweetheart. It was about the neighbor's child. But Ellie had reached her breaking point. Hours of doubt and confusion, culminating in a day of half-truths and evasions, finally boiled over. "Stop lying to me," she cried, her voice cracking with emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over to trace hot paths down her cheeks. "You've been lying all day, all my life. I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not stupid. Just tell me the truth." The force of her outburst seemed to physically push Henry back. His shoulders sagged. Defeat was written across his features. "It was for your own good," he said weakly. "We can explain everything." "You'd better," Ellie replied, her voice hard with anger and hurt. She crossed her arms over her chest, as if trying to hold herself together as her world fell apart around her. Over the next hour, in halting, guilt-laden words, Henry and Lisa unraveled the tapestry of lies they had woven around Ellie's life. The living room of the Airbnb apartment became a confessional. The truth spilled out in a torrent of words that seemed to physically fill the space between them. They told her of that fateful day in Hyde Park, London. She had been just 3 years old. They had stalked her family for days, planning the perfect moment to snatch her away. "It was a busy afternoon," Henry explained, his voice hollow. "Your real parents were chatting with another couple. You were playing near a small ice cream stand." Lisa picked up the thread of the story, her eyes brimming with tears. "I pretended to trip and spill a drink near your parents. It was just enough of a distraction. And I walked up to you," Henry continued, his gaze finally meeting Ellie's. "I promised to take you for ice cream. You were such a good girl, so trusting. You didn't resist at all." They spoke of fake documents hastily arranged, of a flight to the United States, of changing her name from Sarah Wells to Ellie Gibson, of building an entire life around a stolen child. Each revelation was another blow, dismantling the life Ellie had known piece by piece. "You're crazy," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "You're criminals." "We love you," Henry pleaded. "These 18 years, we've been a family. We've cared for you, provided for you. We always believed you'd have a better life with us." But Ellie was beyond consolation. The hurt and betrayal were too raw, too overwhelming. "Just because we lived as a family for a long time doesn't mean you're not child kidnappers," she spat, each word dripping with venom. "It doesn't mean we're really family." Lisa tried to interject. "What do you mean, Ellie? We are family. We love each other. Family doesn't have to be blood relatives. There's so many." But Ellie cut her off. "I loved you both, but now I don't want to be family with kidnappers who've been lying to me for 18 years. I'm going to the police station now, and I'm reporting you both." The color drained from Henry and Lisa's faces. Panic flashed in Henry's eyes, and he took a step toward Ellie. "I'm afraid I can't let you go now," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Ellie backed away, her eyes wide with disbelief. The man before her bore little resemblance to the loving father she had known. In his place stood a desperate criminal, cornered and unpredictable. "You're out of your mind," she said, her voice shaking. "You can't just keep me here. You'll go to jail for this." But as she turned to flee the apartment, Henry's hand shot out, grabbing her arm with bruising force. "Yes, I can," he growled, his face contorted with a mixture of desperation and misguided love. "Because I love you too much to let you ruin our family." In that moment, as Ellie struggled against the iron grip of the man she had called father for 18 years, she realized that the life she had known was truly over. The tension in the room was dense, thick enough to cut with a knife. Ellie's eyes darted between Henry and Lisa, searching for any sign of the loving parents she thought she knew. But all she saw were strangers, kidnappers, who had stolen her life. "Let me go," Ellie cried, her voice raw with emotion. She struggled against Henry's grip, her free hand pushing against his chest. "I'm not your prisoner. You can't do this." Henry's face was a mask of determination and fear. His eyes were wild with a desperation Ellie had never seen before. "We need to sit down and discuss this. We love you, Ellie. We didn't treat you like a prisoner. We can't let you throw away all the good things that we've built." Ellie's fear quickly turned to anger, a white-hot rage that burned through her veins. She lashed out, both physically and verbally. "I hate you!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You're liars. Child kidnappers." The words seemed to snap something in Henry. His hand rose, and before anyone could react, he slapped Ellie across the face with such force that her lips split. A trickle of blood ran down her chin. The sound of the slap echoed in the suddenly silent room, a physical manifestation of the violence that had been done to Ellie's life. Ellie cried out in pain and shock, her hand flying to her stinging cheek. She tasted blood, metallic and warm on her tongue. Even Lisa gasped, frozen in horror at the scene unfolding before her. Taking advantage of Ellie's momentary stunned state, Henry roughly pulled her toward the bathroom. His grip was bruising, his movements jerky and uncontrolled. With a forceful shove, he pushed her inside and quickly locked the door. Ellie stumbled, catching herself on the sink. The cold porcelain beneath her hands was a stark contrast to the heat of her flushed skin. She spun around, pounding on the door with her fists. "Let me out!" she screamed, her voice hoarse with tears and fear. The small space of the bathroom seemed to close in on her, amplifying her panic. From the other side of the door, Henry's voice came, a mixture of anger and desperation. "This is your fault, Ellie. We just want to talk to you, to find a solution. We love you so much. Everything we did was for your own good. We gave you the best life, the best education, the best attention and time. But you've disappointed us and made us angry now." The words, meant to justify their actions, only fueled Ellie's anger and fear. How could they claim that kidnapping her, lying to her for her entire life, was for her own good? Ellie slid down to the floor, her back against the door. Sobs racked her body. The taste of blood in her mouth was a stark reminder of how quickly her world had shattered. The cool tiles of the bathroom floor seeped through her clothes, chilling her to the bone, but she barely noticed. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and betrayal. Outside, she could hear Lisa's muffled cries and Henry's agitated pacing. The sounds of their distress, once something that would have concerned her, now only added to her own anguish. These people, whom she had loved and trusted implicitly, were now her captors. "If you don't calm down," Henry called through the door, his voice alternating between threatening and pleading, "we'll keep you locked in there for nights if we have to, until you come to your senses and apologize for calling us that." The threat hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. Ellie felt a chill run down her spine at the thought of being trapped in this small space for nights on end. She knew they were only in London for a week, but even so, she feared she wouldn't find any escape from them once they returned to the US. Amid her fear, however, a spark of defiance ignited within her. "You'll go to jail for this," Ellie shouted back, her voice trembling but defiant. "You can't keep me here forever. This isn't home." As the reality of her situation sank in, Ellie's mind raced. She thought of her real parents, the ones she had never known, the woman she had seen putting up flyers. Could that have been her real mother? The thought brought a fresh wave of tears. What kind of life might she have had if she hadn't been stolen away? What experiences, what love, what truth had been denied her? In the living room, Henry's panic was escalating. Through the door, Ellie could hear him moving back and forth, his footsteps heavy and erratic. She imagined him running his hands through his hair, wiping his face repeatedly, gestures she had seen 1,000 times before, but now imbued with a sinister new meaning. Then something changed. The pacing stopped. There was a long, terrible silence, and then a sickening thud. Ellie heard Lisa's sharp gasp. Then nothing. She pressed her ear against the door, her heart pounding. "Mom? Dad? What's happening?" A moment later, she heard Lisa's voice, choked with tears. "Ellie? Stand back from the door." The lock clicked. The door opened slowly. Lisa stood there, her face pale and streaked with tears. In her hand, she held a heavy cast-iron pan. Behind her, on the floor, lay Henry, unconscious. A bruise was already forming on the back of his head. Ellie stared in shock. What did you do?" Lisa dropped the pan, clattered to the floor, the sound impossibly loud. "I couldn't let him hurt you anymore," she whispered. "I couldn't let him lock you up. This had to end." Ellie scrambled to her feet, pressing herself against the far wall of the bathroom. Her eyes were wide with fear and confusion. The girl's face was pale, tear-stained, a vivid bruise blooming on her cheek where Henry had struck her. "Ellie," Lisa sobbed, reaching out but not daring to touch her. "I'm so sorry for everything. I love you, but you need to go. Go to the police. Report us. It's the only way out of this." Ellie stared at Lisa, her eyes searching the older woman's face. The fear in her expression was slowly replaced by confusion, then a wary sort of hope. "Why?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. "Why are you helping me? Why now?" Lisa's face crumpled with guilt and sorrow. "Because I know there were only two ways this could end. Either this, or your father would have hurt you or kept you locked up for the rest of your life. I love you too much to let that happen." Ellie's mind reeled. Part of her wanted to lash out at Lisa, to scream and cry and demand answers for the years of lies. But another part, the part that still remembered the love and care she had received, felt a confusing mix of gratitude and sorrow. "Go," Lisa urged, stepping back to clear the way. "The police will help. They'll contact the U.S. authorities. They'll keep you safe." For a moment, Ellie hesitated. Despite everything, the thought of turning in the people who had raised her, who she had loved as parents for 18 years, felt like a betrayal. The complexity of her emotions, love, hate, fear, gratitude, threatened to overwhelm her. Lisa seemed to sense her hesitation. "You deserve to know the truth, love," she said softly, her voice breaking on the endearment. "You deserve to set things right." Those words, spoken with such raw honesty, seemed to break through Ellie's paralysis. With a shaky nod, she moved past Lisa. The familiar scent of Lisa's perfume, once comforting now, made Ellie's stomach churn with conflicting emotions. Ellie paused only long enough to gather the evidence of the flyers, the photo print, before rushing out of the apartment. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The sound was somehow final, marking the end of one life and the beginning of another. Outside, Ellie ran through the streets of London. Her heart pounded and her mind raced. The city that had seemed so exciting and full of possibility that morning now felt alien and threatening. Every face she passed was a potential threat. Every corner a possible hiding place for the secrets that had defined her life. She had no idea what the future held, but she knew she had to find the truth about herself, about her past, and about the family she had never known. With each step, she was running not just away from the apartment and the life she had known, but toward a future that was terrifying in its uncertainty. After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, Ellie finally spotted the distinctive blue lamp that marked a police station. The sight of it brought a fresh wave of emotions. Relief mingled with fear and uncertainty. When she burst through the doors, she was breathless and trembling. The sudden transition from the noise and chaos of the street to the quiet, orderly interior of the station was jarring. The fluorescent lights seemed harsh after the warm afternoon sun, casting everything in a stark, unforgiving glow. The officers on duty looked up in surprise as she approached the desk, clutching the missing person flyer in her shaking hands. I need to report myself and my parents," Ellie gasped, her voice quavering. She held out the flyer, her hand shaking so badly she could barely keep hold of it. "I'm this missing girl." The shock on the officers' faces quickly gave way to professional efficiency. One of them, a kind-faced woman with graying hair, stepped forward. "Come with me, love," she said gently. "Let's get you somewhere quiet where we can talk." They ushered Ellie into a private room. Over the next few hours, she found herself recounting everything. The story Henry had told her about the kidnapping in Hyde Park, the hasty flight to America, the years of deception. The words poured out of her in a torrent, as if now that she had started, she couldn't stop. She handed over the flyers and the photo, watching as the officers carefully bagged them as evidence. "We'll need to collect your DNA," one of the officers explained kindly, "and we'll need to contact your real parents to come in for testing as well. It usually takes a day or two for results, but given the circumstances, we'll expedite the process." Ellie nodded numbly. As she sat there, waiting for the DNA swab, she couldn't help but wonder about her real parents. What were they like? Would they want her back after all these years? Her thoughts were interrupted by a commotion outside the room. The door opened, and Ellie's heart leapt into her throat as she recognized the woman who entered. It was the same woman she had seen posting flyers outside the apartment. The woman's eyes widened in recognition. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I knew it was you," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. "I had the feeling when you talked to me earlier." Tears welled up in Ellie's eyes as the woman, her real mother, rushed forward, enveloping her in a tight embrace. The scent of her perfume, unfamiliar yet somehow right, enveloped Ellie. She found herself clinging to the stranger who was also her mother. Years of loss and longing poured out in racking sobs. A man followed close behind, his face a mixture of shock and joy. He hesitated for a moment, as if afraid to break the spell, before joining the embrace. Ellie felt his strong arms encircle both her and her mother. Over the following hours, Ellie's real parents introduced themselves as Nessa and Edric Wells. The names felt strange on Ellie's tongue, yet there was an undeniable rightness to them. "We lost you in Hyde Park," Nessa explained, her voice thick with emotion. Her hand never left Ellie's, as if afraid she might disappear again if she let go. "You were just 3 years old. We were chatting with another couple, and by the time we realized you were gone," Edric picked up the story. "We never even got a chance to see their faces. They vanished with you so quickly. We've been searching for you all these years," Edric continued, his voice breaking. "This was our last ad campaign. We spent our last bit of savings on these flyers. If we hadn't found you now," his voice trailed off. The unspoken what if hung heavily in the air. Then, a police officer entered with news. "We've received some preliminary results. They confirm a familial match between Miss Gibson, or rather, Miss Wells, and Mr. and Mrs. Wells." Nessa's grip on Ellie's hand tightened. Edric stopped his pacing abruptly, turning to face the officer with wide eyes. "However," the officer continued, "there's been a development at the apartment where Miss Wells was staying. The individuals she identified as her kidnappers have been taken into custody." Ellie felt her heart skip a beat. "Taken into custody? You mean they've been arrested?" The officer nodded solemnly. "They're being processed now. Given the nature of the allegations and the international aspects of the case, it's a complex situation. But yes, they're under arrest." A maelstrom of emotions swept through Ellie. Relief, fear, anger, and a surprising pang of concern for the only parents she had ever known. Can I see them?" she asked, surprising even herself. The officer hesitated but eventually led them to a viewing area outside the booking room. Through a large window, Ellie could see the processing area. And there, looking small and defeated, were Henry and Lisa. Henry's face was a mask of anguish, his eyes red-rimmed and unfocused. Lisa seemed to be in a state of shock, her movements mechanical as she followed the officer's instructions. As if sensing her presence, both Henry and Lisa looked up. Their eyes met Ellie's through the glass. The moment stretched, laden with unspoken words and a lifetime of complicated emotions. Lisa broke first. Her composure crumbled as she began to cry. "Ellie," she called out, her voice muffled by the glass but still audible. "We're so sorry. We surrender. We never meant for it to end like this." Henry nodded, his own eyes filling with tears. "We love you," he said, his voice breaking. "We always have. Everything we did. It was because we loved you too much." Ellie felt her own tears spill over. She pressed her hand against the glass, a gesture somewhere between a farewell and a plea for understanding. As Henry and Lisa were led away, disappearing from view, Ellie wondered if she could ever fully recover from this revelation. A part of her yearned to maintain some relationship with Lisa, who had ultimately saved her from captivity. But Ellie didn't know if she could ever forgive them for what they had done. Sensing her turmoil, Nessa and Edric gently told her, "It's okay, Ellie. We understand this isn't easy. Take all the time you need. Knowing you're safe is enough for us. We couldn't ask for more than seeing how you've grown into such a beautiful, strong woman." Ellie nodded, grateful for their understanding. "It will take me some time," she admitted. "I don't know how long. This trip to London was supposed to be a family holiday with Henry and Lisa. We'd been saving for so long. Seeing it all crumble in one day, it's not easy." Nessa reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. She handed it to Ellie, who saw a baby version of herself smiling at the camera. "You were born here in London," Nessa explained, her voice thick with emotion. "This is where your home is, and it will always be open to you if you ever decide to come." Ellie felt a warmth spread through her chest. She looked at both Nessa and Edric. "Thank you," she said sincerely. They exchanged contact information, promises to stay in touch hanging in the air between them. A police officer approached, gently interrupting the moment. "Miss Wells, we need to arrange for your stay here. Since you're 18, you don't need a legal guardian. But we should discuss your options." As they followed the officer to another room, Ellie found herself reflecting on how her family holiday had turned out. Just that morning, she had been a carefree American teenager on a family vacation, excited about capturing memories with a street photographer's camera. Now, she stood at the threshold of a new life, her identity in flux, caught between two sets of parents and two versions of herself. The weight of the truth was heavy, but it also brought with it a sense of liberation. For the first time, Ellie felt she could see the world and herself clearly. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges she could scarcely imagine, but it was also rich with possibilities. As she stepped into the room where her immediate future would be decided, Ellie realized that while the life she had known had ended, a new one was just beginning. And in that moment, despite the pain and confusion, she felt a flicker of excitement for what lay ahead. So there you have it. One photo, one missing person flyer, and 18 years of lies, all shattered in a single day. What would you have done if you were Ellie? Would you have been able to forgive? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another shocking story. I'll see you in the next video.